June the 23rd, 2026. Someone is 10 years old on this birthday. And the winner is Brexit.
And it is Brexit. Brexit.
Brexit.
Brexit. Brexit.
It's been 10 years now since the UK shocked Europe by voting to leave the EU.
It's 10 years since the UK chose Brexit. It was one of the most consequential moments for the country since the Second World War.
Already
10 years since the vote.
That's the vote, yeah. The famous vote that Cameron brought in thinking that it was going to be a nothing burger, to use an American
Exactly.
term, and it
He made
destroyed
it
him.
binding as well, which meant that whatever happened was going to be enacted, and 51.9% of the UK that voted to leave the EU.
52% voted to leave the European Union, despite the leaders of the main parties being against it, despite advice from the US, despite repeated warnings about the economy.
17 million people voted for Brexit.
Take back control.
3, 2, 1.
Wow.
Cameron resigned, of course, immediately after.
I think the country requires fresh leadership to take it in this direction.
And we have a succession of prime ministers that can't actually sort it out.
Cameron didn't try and deliver Brexit, he simply resigned. Theresa May tried to deliver it and resigned. Boris Johnson tried to deliver it and resigned. Liz Truss resigned, and Rishi Sunak was eventually defeated in the elections.
Some people thought they could, like Boris Johnson, who made his campaign on Get Brexit Done.
We will do a new deal, a better deal.
And he moved swiftly on as well. And now we're in turmoil. The whole country is given up on the Conservatives. Labour's got voted in with a landslide majority, the greatest since World War II. And 2 years later, here we are. And Keir Starmer's leadership is in crisis. And who knows if Labour is going to be able to hold on when the next elections come. Absolutely the worst decision politically, economically, morally, morale-wise for the UK that's ever happened. There is nothing good that's come out of it.
Well,
Nigel Farage?
you're
No.
living in Australia.
I'm living in Australia. You're living in Australia. I don't think I'm necessarily going back until things would ever change. But let's have a look at it. Let's break it down.
Right.
Economically, the GDP, the gross domestic product in the UK, is between 6 to 8% below where it should be had we stayed in the EU. Had the UK stayed in the EU, it would be 6 to 8% better per head in the UK.
Experts reckon the economy is about 4 to 8% smaller as a result of Brexit because of lost opportunities for trade.
That's a phenomenal number. UK trade is down 10 to 15%, not just with the EU but worldwide. Now they've done a shift from less EU, more other non-EU countries, but down by 10 to 15% on world trade.
Wow.
Which is unbelievable.
But official figures now show that Brexit has actually hurt the UK economy. UK goods exports to the EU have taken a hit, dropping by 14% over 6 years. Even goods exports to non-EU countries dropped by 8%, as Britain is no longer a gateway to the EU.
And if you also measure business investment, corporate investment in the UK, that is significantly lower than the rest of the G7 as a benchmark. So if you look economically, there is no good news story there.
Wow.
It had a huge impact on investment. A lot of companies effectively stopped investing in Britain or started investing less. It had a huge impact on just general business sentiment, and there was a lot of uncertainty. And businesses don't like uncertainty. They like stable rules, they like predictability, and Brexit was the very opposite of that.
You could say it's a return to roots, and there would be an opportunity for the UK to rebuild infrastructure and do things differently, but that has not yet taken effect. So economically, it's an F. Let's look at the mood of the country. In a recent poll, 57% of people said they would like to either return to the EU or have much closer economic EU ties.
If the polls are to be believed, up to 2/3 of British voters across all party lines believe Britain's decision to leave the European Union 10 years ago was a mistake. A recent survey showed a majority thought Brexit had increased the cost of living and had a negative impact on the economy.
But successive prime ministers since Brexit's occurred have tried to do that kind of secretly, either sort of form relations again with the EU otherwise, and that hasn't worked, and they have failed, and they have been kicked out and moved on, and we've had political shifts from Conservative to Labour, and now a rising with the Reform Party.
Huzzah! Independence Day!
It's been quite an important shift in that. So the mood has really shifted in the UK. And the last one is domestic realities. One of the reasons the UK wanted to leave the EU was controlling immigration, amongst other things. But immigration was really high up there. It was a very emotional subject 10 years ago. But immigration's increased in the UK since Brexit. Not with the number of EU people moving in, but with non-EU people moving in. Whether it's the refugees coming over on the boats or the students or whatever, it's increased. Now, there's just recently been a dip, but domestic realities are it's gone up since Brexit, ironically.
After Britain left the EU, migration from European countries declined, but migration from non-European countries rose sharply, reaching almost 1 million in 2023 before falling again.
Has Brexit made it harder for us to deal with those issues of asylum claims, small boats?
There are people in northern France who say that the reason that they're coming to the UK is that they've been refused asylum in an EU country, and they know that they can get another asylum decision if they come to the UK. So we know that that exists as a phenomenon.
And the debate about migration, if anything, it's more toxic than ever.
Send them home! Send them home!
And one of the ironic things in there is Northern Ireland. Now, Northern Ireland has no fixed now border with Ireland. This was an agreement that was negotiated at length with the EU. So Northern Ireland has access to the EU through Ireland and access to the UK through Brexit. And it's thriving in comparison with the UK.
I can imagine.
It's an absolute benchmark in terms of what could happen had people thought differently and got it right. 10 years of Brexit, it's not looking good. I think there needs to be a rethink in the UK.
Some advocate rejoining the EU, something a recent poll suggested 52% of the British public would now support.
But what's your view? What do you look at that as a non-UK person? What do you think's happened?
I think there's this crazy kind of populism that's sort of sweeping the world in the last 10 or more years. And I think, the UK got wound up with that whole rah-rah, we're independent, we're tough, we're the UK.
In Britain, politicians who speak the language of betrayal and unfinished Brexit business have found a large audience.
Just like America's gone through the Make America Great Again business. And Australia is now following with the whole one nation, we want to take our country back kind of stuff. Well, it's all just based on bullshit, all of that stuff. There's no reality to it. People are acting emotionally because I'd probably argue the vast majority of people are not really actively engaged in politics and not really actively engaged in economics, and that's understandable.
Yep.
There's a lot in that, and not everyone has an economics degree or a degree in political science, and I don't have either of those. But a lot of it is just opinion rather than fact.
Well, just on fact, a lot of the facts that were presented to UK citizens were not true. Boris and Nigel Farage, etc., didn't actually present true facts when they were going.
10 years ago, there was a big red bus. No, not that one, this one. It toured Britain with a huge promise painted on its side.
Vote Leave, my friends.
£350 million a week for the National Health Service. The first big promise, the one that ended up on the side of that bus, was we will be able to save £350 million a week, and we can spend that on things like the NHS. Now, our own fact-check team at the time found that that figure was misleading.
We can take back control of £350 million a week and spend on our priorities here in this country, including on the National Health Service.
That argument was dodgy from the start. It ignored the money that the UK got back from the EU, and the Statistics Authority called it potentially misleading.
And a lot of the people who voted for Brexit...
facts.
Alternative facts.
Look, alternative facts are not facts. They're falsehoods.
But a lot of the people who voted for Brexit knew that that information out there wasn't necessarily 100% accurate, but they still thought taking back the UK and its parliamentary directives away from the EU would still be a step in the right direction despite that.
Yeah.
It's proven to be absolutely disastrous on both fronts.
Yeah. And in a way, it's a lot of this is tribalism. It doesn't matter that you're right or wrong. They don't care.
No, they don't. It's done.
Don't care. It's done.
And they got what they wanted out of it.
Yeah, and they feel good for 5 seconds, and then they move on, and then they live with the consequences later.
Except if your name is Nigel Farage, in which case you're still in the running, you're still polling as maybe the next Prime Minister of the UK, if there was a general election tomorrow, rather like Pauline Hanson in Australia with One Nation.
Yeah.
Very similar in terms of the setup with the dissolution of the two-party system and a movement to a new party to fix everything and change things, with still emotional things like immigration needing to be fixed in both countries, Australia and the UK. This is absolutely a change in the whole structure of the way politics has been run in the countries. But you have, to sum it all up, the opportunity to present this episode's Peace Prize. This is our Political Pub Chat Peace Prize, P2CP2. And this episode's winner for 2026, 10 years since Brexit occurred, this goes to, it was close with Nigel Farage, I have to say, but it does go to Boris Johnson.
Boris.
I believe that this Thursday can be our country's Independence Day.
On your Boris.
For inflicting more dissent and unhappiness in the UK than any other peace. Taking apart the UK piece by piece, hence the Peace Prize.
The Peace Prize. That's it. That's what it's all about.
So Boris, this is your tankard. Come and get it if you want. So if you get through immigration in Australia, you can have it. And there we go.
That's it for this time. We'll see you some other time.
And let's not forget about this.
You cannot sell bananas with abnormal curvature of the fingers.
If you believe the tabloids and Boris Johnson, Brussels had spent decades banning Brits from buying imperfectly curved bananas.
Alternative facts to that, but the point remains.
Wait a minute. Look, alternative facts are not facts. They're falsehoods.